How's it going, everyone? This is Wimbo. Today I'm actually start producing a brand new series of lighting series in blenders. Because I'm a photographer, probably as you know, and I get a lot of inquiries about how can we doing better lightings in the CG world, and especially when you're using a blender. So I made this entire series trying to let you understand what is this actual studio light is, because without really knowing or working actually inside of photography studios, you wouldn't really know what kind of lights photographers are using and how to creating similar lighting effect in the 3D. So I'm thinking this is a really good knowledge. It's not just about to being lighting things in a very realistic way and to creating everything physically accurate, but I'm hoping using this series of videos that I can help you to understanding lighting better in general. So it doesn't matter if you're photographers or designers, and it's very important to know how to light. So today's topic for this video is about softboxes. So here's a couple examples that you will see on the market that you can purchase. This one is not a really technically called softbox. Softbox basically is like either square shape or rectangular shape, this softbox, like something like this. And this is people call it octabox because a certain 8 numbers of a certain number 10 numbers of the side, so actually the different shape of the softbox. But in the photography world, the only thing differences is just sometimes when you photograph people and they have some eyeballs reflections about a highlight in their eyeballs, this is gonna looks like a octa shape, and this is going to be a square shape. That's the only differences between that. The light qualities and other aspect all depends on the size of it, distance, and how you use it. So we're not going to get into that too much in the photography world, but in this case I just want to show you how these lights, we can replicate this type of light in the blender and in the 3D world, and also why these things are working in photography and lighting in general. So these things, you see this is kind of a grid shape or something like that. It's actually just called grid in the photography. So you can actually purchase this as one single items. You can put this thing inside of that, and after you install these and then you can see this thing is just attached in the front. What this thing does is basically control or to narrow down the beam of a light. So okay, let me demonstrate what it looks like in the real world in using Blender. Okay, let's turn it off. So let's get the background up, and we have an area light, right? So you know what is area light. Actually, you can just hit Shift A to adding a light. You can pick a area light. So you can see this area light. It usually come out with the default shapes like square. You can choose rectangular, disc, or whatever. It just has shape differences, right? You can just change the shape. And if you're doing that, it's a round one. It's like circle. Actually, in the real world, in the photography, with having a very even light coming out with this circle shape, it's called a beauty dish. Okay. I'm not gonna get into too much on that, but I just want to let you know things is available out there. So let's go with the square, right? So this is the soft box. If you imagine that, although in the Blender 2.9 you wouldn't see actually the brightness of this light, but I believe in the coming up Blender 3.0 you will see actually light like this. Anyhow, so this is what we have for the default light. Just a couple of reasons that I don't like to use this one. It's simply because it's actually illuminating the entire surface with very even light. In the real world, when you're actually using a softbox, it's not really going to acting that perfectly, because you know in the actual world, physics and the lighting, everything is just is only going to, the light is not gonna really producing eventually even lighting on all the corners. It's gonna fade out quite dramatically when the light reaching to the edge, and it's supposed to have a hot spot around the lighting center areas, and because you put either a light or strobes in these areas, you're gonna have a little bit brighter than that. Although it can be pretty even, but still there are some differences in there. So this is kind of the regular area light. And another one I built, this is called Softbox, I call it. It's because if I hit this, and I actually made a materials with this light. So because the reason why I'm doing that is like, yeah, it looks about the same. You just can see this white part. Well, it's not technically that much tiny differences, because if I'm just only having this area light going on here, let's here go in here, turn off the softbox. I'm actually to position these two things at the exact same locations, trying to give you a good comparison. When the area light put in here, we cannot do anything with the textures, anything which modified it. What we can do, we can actually use the node, so you can see what's going on here. Although it seems like yeah, we can use the node to do adding texture with it, but if I do Shift A, if adding a, for example gradient texture, put it on, and I hook on this, it suddenly disappeared as the linear mode is disappeared. But if I'm changing something like to the sphericals, and it show up, so it's not really like fully functional with the textures now, where I've been trying to use. So that's why I have to kind of using a simple plane to really kind of replace this regular area light. But most of the time you don't have to, but for the sake of purpose for this softbox lighting videos, I really want to explain the differences. So right now I'm going to turn off this default area light again and turn on the softbox that I have made for this video. Okay, so here to see what is this going on here. So it seems like a little bit complicated, but it is not. So what I'm started with this is just general material light, material output, and then I have an emission shader put it in. And the reason I put another diffusion panels in here, diffuse BSDF, and I put roughness all the way to 1 and put a color in 0. I put a color in the black. So what I'm doing is I'm actually killing the back side of this light. If I'm not doing this, okay, I'm only just hooking this thing over here, you can see this actually planes to have illuminating the both side of both side. So this is not what we want, and also it's not a really you're sometimes you're not really going to get this type of light in the real world either, you illuminating both side as a plane. So it's kind of weird. So what I did is just using a mix shader to kind of mix these two together, and then I'm using a geometry node to hook the back facing as a factor. So I am actually just blocking out the back side of this light. So this is like a good start, right? And in order to getting a little bit better, and of course you don't need to do this, I'm just trying to explain what the real light works in photography. So I'm actually getting a texture image to put on here in the emission shader to give you a little bit of texture. From here, because it's so bright, everything's, you won't see the tiny differences here. But what I have done here, I'm gonna grab you a Photoshop file, a PSD file here to show you what is this image texture looks like. This is what is the default area light looks like. From the edge to the center, all even, beautifully pure white. But for in the real world, the center is supposed to have a hot spot for the light, and gradually kind of this the lighting is gonna go a little bit darker on the edge. It is not a huge drop because the softbox is already built the way that it reflecting the speed light or flash inside of the box, trying to get it more even. But in the real world, it still have some little bit minor lighting decrease towards the edge. So you can do that. It's pretty simple, just getting a white and getting a black solid color and adding a layer mask using a gradient tool. So you can grab that and select this one, and you can just drag gradients on your layer mask real quick. Okay, just like that or something. You can just try to get in that evenly from the center to the edge. Anyway, so this is what this image texture looks like. So I put it in here, and in order to make a little bit, you still can control that a little bit, right? You can just kind of hook it back using a color ramp to kind of control the center of the brightness and everything to do that. Maybe you will ask, why not using a gradient textures and using a spherical, like something like this. Let me do that. That's Shift A gradient textures, and we can do similar things like this let's hook that. You know what, I'm just going to Shift D to duplicate that thing and get these two hooked. Let me cut off this completely, and we can do something like this, and we can hook the object light. This is the one that I've been telling you guys to use in the past couple of videos. It is still the one I use, very common because it's very quickly to make, and we can also adding a color ramp node to control the fall off. Okay, so you can still control, how big, how bright. The problems I'm seeing here is that on the edge is turning to be completely dark, and also it has illuminating the back side of it as well. It's just a small tiny differences that were refine works that we can do to utilizing this light, because the actual light, it does not really working in this way exactly, because you're not supposed getting a dark edge on a light box. A soft box is not really physically accurate. But in the past couple in the past, we are just trying to getting the gradients to kind of like getting the gradients out rather than a default pure white lighting. So I think you see my point for this light. So this is kind of the light I'm actually referring to you guys to you can use that and make a light textures if you really want some very accurate, physically correct light box. You can do a screenshot of this node and then creating a texture, and you are good to go. Anyway, so this part is done. So the next thing I wanted to show you is that although we have softbox going on here, let's put it on a subject over here so you can see some shadows going on here, right? Let's drag this thing down a little bit. As you can see here, so what does the grid does? So I made some grid just like what we're having here. Remember this, look at this. This is like the perfect shape of a grid, because it's like a honeycomb cone or something, honeycomb, or I don't know how to pronounce that exactly, but this is like the shape of the grid. So I made this one. So I just simply call it 30 degrees grid. It's not really technically correct, but you will see the differences. If I'm turning this thing off and turning the 10 degrees on, you can see here it's more dense of the grid. It's still same shape compared to the 30 degrees. It's just got more things going on here. Let's looking at it through the lighting over here. So as you can see here, this is the regular soft box light is going on here. If I'm turning on the 30 degree light here, a grid on, you can see suddenly this beam of light get restricted in certain areas. This is also how the grid works in photography lighting, like real studio lighting. So people purchase these grids trying to have a certain amount of control rather than a big soft light that it can spill everywhere in the scene. So if I'm turning in the 10 degrees on, you'll see, ooh, it become a very small beam of light. At the same time, as you can see, the brightness got killed pretty dramatically. So the same thing happens in the real world. If you're buying some really small degrees grid, you're gonna lose a lot of strength on your lighting. So this is kind of differences on the grid. Okay, so now you understand how to do this. But in the 3D, you don't technically need to use build a grid to control the lighting, of course. So what people usually do in here is we can actually using a spotlight to replicating that look. So I'm just creating like two different scenes. One is the one regular softbox with a grid, so I'm with a scene so built here, and this is just a default spotlight. So I will highly recommend you to utilizing this. If imagine that you want control a light area support of you want to control the beam of light and shape of it to utilizing this spotlight. So what you can do, just shift A to adding a light using the spotlight, and then you have this. And as you can see here, there's still quite differences from the shape of that, because the softbox is even square shapes, and the light is going to come out in this way with a grid, and the spotlight has something cut off over there. But in the reality, when you're lighting a scene, you really don't see that much. And the important part is the lighting quality and the effect. So what we can do here, I wanted you guys to pay attention to utilizing this. If you are actually having the radius, you can control the radius. It's basically control only the size differences and also the softness of a harsh lighting is be. If I'm put this into 0, you can see how sharp the edge of going to be the lighting that is. It's just actually is another series of lighting that we will discussing in the future coming up videos about how can we do that and why we're doing that. And then we are just going to mimic the exactly same effect. They're just dragging some a radius to get it bigger, and then you get some soft transitioning going on here. Another thing is for the spot size, which is actually the beam of light. You basically utilizing this number to control the certain amount of degrees of grid that you want to use. So you can just kind of do that to open it up. This is kind of basically no grid, and then like 30-degree grid, and then like 10-degree grid, right? It's funny that if you do that, it also the blender is so smart, actually kind of help you to kind of kill some brightness of your light as well. It looks pretty similar the way how the grid works. It's amazing, right? So that's why I really love blenders, and because I have a good knowledge of lighting as a photographer, jumping into the 3D world with that lighting knowledge, it really helped me quite a bit when I started. So I just want to share you some of my insight about lighting, and also trying to help you guys to understanding what a studio light works in the real world, because without really working inside of photography studios, or you never actually touching these real lights, you will never really truly understand the differences in the 3D and the real photography. So that's why I'm thinking, well, this can be helpful, because you will understand what the light works, and how to creating a similar effect using a blender and using 3D. So again, thank you for watching, and this is going to be an ongoing series for lighting, and I really think my strength in the 3D is going to be lighting, and also there's not a whole lot good knowledge about how to teaching people understanding light in the when people creating a 3D world, 3D works, because most of the 3D artists are coming from a graphic designers and a background, so they don't really do a lot with the lighting, and I think my knowledge is gonna be a really good addition to this platform. And if you're really also into these photorealistic product rendering, this is also my niche. And then just please consider subscribe my channel. And if you want to hang out on social media, Instagram will be a good place to do. Well, okay. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.